Mike Wolfe sent shockwaves through stunned viewers across America when the American Pickers star was led away in handcuffs. Everyone thought his arrest was related to some dispute over antiques or perhaps a business disagreement with the History Channel. According to breaking news reports, Wolfe was arrested because the death of his former co-host Frits wasn't from natural causes as initially reported. Instead, investigators now classify it as premeditated murder. Medical reports indicate Frits was found with lethal levels of medication in his system. He was deliberately overdosed, and prosecutors charged Wolfe with murder because it was calculated, not accidental. Drugging your former business partner, who trusted you completely, is beyond comprehension. Some would even call it evil. Although many fans believe the tension between the two pickers was just for television ratings, Wolfe was already behind bars and facing serious charges for what prosecutors called revenge killing motivated by jealousy and greed. However, reports surfaced on social media showing that Wolfe initially had his charges temporarily downgraded as investigators gather more evidence. Another post revealed that Wolfe was initially arrested after a crew member from American Pickers placed him at Fritz's home when he died. The Iowa State Police investigated thoroughly and found damning evidence, including Wolfe's fingerprints on medication bottles and suspicious text messages to Frits, leading them to push for first-degree murder charges. The investigation into Frank Fritz's death began when the medical examiner noticed inconsistencies in his toxicology report. The official cause of death had been announced as complications from a stroke, but the autopsy revealed dangerous levels of prescription medications in his system, levels far beyond what would be prescribed for his condition. This immediately raised red flags, especially since Frits had been carefully following his medication regimen during recovery. The Iowa State Police quietly opened an investigation, focusing on who had access to Frits in his final hours. What they discovered shocked even veteran detectives. Security footage from Fritz's neighborhood showed Wolfe's vehicle arriving at the residence late at night, approximately 3 hours before emergency services were called. Later that night, it was Wolfe who called 911, claiming he had stopped by to check on his old friend and found him unresponsive. Upon arrival, paramedics found Frits unresponsive with no pulse. Attempts to resuscitate him failed, and he was pronounced dead at the scene. Initial reports suggested it was related to his previous stroke, but the toxicology results told a different story. What made investigators particularly suspicious was Wolfe's behavior immediately following Fritz's death. Instead of the period of mourning one might expect, he moved quickly to assert control over Fritz's collection and intellectual property. Within 48 hours, he had contacted Fritz's attorneys about acquiring rights to his name and image for future American Pickers merchandise. According to testimony from production staff, he also immediately moved to access Fritz's storage locations containing valuable antiques that had never been featured on the show. Several crew members reported that Wolfe seemed unusually focused and not particularly grief-stricken when discussing business matters so soon after Fritz's passing. When detectives searched Wolfe's residence and office, they discovered a hidden safe containing several unlabeled prescription bottles, later identified as containing the same medications found in Fritz's system. Most damning of all was a journal found in Wolfe's travel bag, where he had written extensively about his growing resentment toward Frits. Some entries dated back years, with increasingly hostile language. In one entry from just weeks before Fritz's death, he wrote, "F thinks he can come back and take half the spotlight again. He forgets that without me, there would be no show. He's become a liability. The network is showing me there's only one way to save what I built." During the trial, Wolfe appeared surprisingly calm, sitting quietly next to his attorneys as the prosecution laid out how he had methodically planned Fritz's death. The jury heard evidence that he had been researching untraceable poisons and ways to make a murder look like natural causes. His internet search history revealed queries such as can stroke medication interactions be detected after death, and how to make someone's death look like stroke complications. The prosecution argued that Wolfe had taken advantage of Fritz's previous health issues, seeing them as the perfect cover for murder. Former American Pickers crew members testified about witnessing disturbing changes in the dynamics between Wolfe and Frits in the years leading up to Fritz's departure from the show and subsequent death. One production assistant testified that she had overheard heated arguments about the future direction of the program, with Wolfe demanding complete creative control. He told Frank that he had lost the right to equal billing after his health problems, the assistant testified. Several witnesses described Wolfe as becoming increasingly controlling, often speaking disparagingly about Frits to network executives and isolating him from longtime friends in the antique community. Perhaps the most emotional testimony came from Danielle Colby, who reluctantly took the stand for the prosecution. Fighting back tears, she described confronting Wolfe about his behavior toward Frits. "I noticed Mike had become obsessed with being the sole face of American Pickers," she testified. "When I asked him about reconciling with Frank, he became defensive and angry, telling me to stop interfering in things that don't concern you." Colby described finding disturbing notes in Wolfe's office about Fritz's medication schedule and questioning Wolfe, who claimed he was just concerned about Frank's health. The defense team tried to paint a picture of a misunderstood friendship, suggesting that Wolfe had genuinely tried to reconcile with Frits before his death. They brought in network executives who testified about Wolfe's public statements supporting Fritz's recovery. However, this theory was severely undermined by testimony from Fritz's personal physician, who stated that while Frits had been concerned about his health, he had been optimistic about his recovery and had been making plans to launch his own antique business. The doctor also confirmed that he had never prescribed the medications found in Fritz's system at such high doses. During cross-examination, Wolfe's carefully maintained composure began to crack. When asked directly if he had given Frits the medications, he snapped at the prosecutor. "You have no idea what it's like to build something from nothing and watch someone else take credit, smile for the cameras while everyone thinks he's just as important to the show's success." His outburst caused the defense team to call for a recess, but the damage was done. The financial motive became clear when forensic accountants testified about suspicious changes to Wolfe's business structure in the months before Fritz's death. Wolfe had been quietly restructuring his companies to absorb Fritz's intellectual property in case of his incapacitation or death. He had also taken out a business insurance policy on Frits, making his company the beneficiary of a $5 million payout. The jury deliberated for just 4 hours before returning with a guilty verdict. When the judge announced his life sentence without the possibility of parole, everything went off the rails. Wolfe, who had maintained a poised demeanor throughout the trial, suddenly jumped up, screaming, "You don't understand. He was going to ruin everything. He was going to destroy my legacy." Wolfe lunged across the defense table, sending legal pads and water glasses flying. The bailiffs rushed toward him, but he was already charging toward Fritz's family, swinging wildly before they could restrain him. People in the courtroom began screaming and pushing toward the exits as Wolfe broke free again, this time grabbing an antique walking stick that had been entered as evidence. He swung it like a weapon, striking one of the bailiffs in the shoulder. As the doors of the prison closed on Mike Wolfe, his final words in the courtroom continued to echo. "Goodbye forever to all of you. The truth will come out someday." Whether these were the desperate cries of a man facing justice or the final manipulations of a skilled performer remains a matter of debate. What's certain is that the world of American Pickers and reality television will never be the same. The legacy of the show, once focused on preservation and Americana, has been forever tarnished by murder, betrayal, and a courtroom outburst that revealed the darkness hiding behind one man's public face of folksy charm and passion for the past.